Every year, I see thousands of developers trying to break into crypto, and most of them fail. Not because they're not smart enough, not because they can't code, and not because there aren't enough opportunities. They fail because they're following the wrong playbook. The internet is full of advice about how to get into crypto. But the problem is, most of this advice comes from people who have never actually been hired, never actually built anything that's been shipped, and never actually been on the other side of the table actually evaluating candidates. It's all noise, and at the end of the day, if you're following the noise, you're going to end up lost. If you don't know me, my name is Amaechi. I'm a former Chainlink software engineer, and I currently run my own crypto development agency called the Central Hub. We're behind the scenes building the infrastructure for some of your favorite crypto projects, including smart contracts, protocol engineering, and security audits. I've hired developers, I've been hired as a developer, I've seen what actually gets people through the door, and I've seen what leaves people stuck outside. In this video, I'm going to break down everything I know about the crypto development market and how it works. I'm going to explain to you why most developers get stuck and are hopeless, and then I'm going to give you the exact roadmap that's going to take you from zero to hired and making money in crypto as a dev. And if you don't believe me, I've got numerous results to showcase. Most recently, one of my students just landed a role at Binance while he was still in his third year of university studying. I want to break down everything that made that possible. But first, you need to understand how the industry works, because it's probably not what you think, and you've probably never experienced anything like this before. See, the problem in crypto is that most developers think that hiring in crypto works like it does in traditional tech, right? And you're surrounded by all this noise and all these different things happening in the industry without actually understanding what gets you hired. You see, most developers are seeing all this chaotic things happening in the industry, whereas they don't actually know what the real skills are that get you hired. You see, in Web 2, there's a formula, right? You get a degree, grind leak code, you apply to companies, you go through their process, you get your resume, you get your credentials, and all of these different things carry weight. Whereas in crypto, it's completely different. The first thing you need to understand is that in crypto, credentials matter less here than almost any other engineering field. Nobody cares where you went to school. Nobody cares what certifications you have. Nobody cares if you completed a course and got a certification at the end. What they care about is what you built, whether you actually understand the domain and whether you actually understand what you're building. This is something that I call the signal problem. You see, from my hiring experience, I know that crypto teams are drowning in applicants. Everybody knows Solidity now. Everybody's completed a blockchain course and everyone's passionate about Web3. But that doesn't really mean anything, because when a team is hiring, they're not looking for someone who can prove that they sat through some YouTube videos. They're looking for a signal that you're different to the rest. You see, there's thousands of applicants, but only a few are actually getting through to interviews. Why do you think that is? They need to, you need to be able to show that you understand how this stuff works, because the blockchain industry is completely different to every other tech industry that exists. You need to be able to prove that you can ship code that they can trust. And trust is a key word here, because think about what crypto engineers do, right? They write code that handles real money, millions of dollars, sometimes even billions. So one vulnerability, one oversight in your smart contract, and your funds get drained. Your protocol gets exploited and people lose everything. So when a team is evaluating you, they're not just asking if this person can code, they're asking is, can I trust this person to not ship something that will destroy us? That's why depth beats breadth every single time in crypto. Me personally, I'd rather hire someone who deeply understands one protocol than someone who superficially touched 10 different chains, because the person with depth actually wrestled with the hard problems. They've thought about the edge cases and they've developed a security mindset. The person with breadth has just collected surface level knowledge, and surface level knowledge is dangerous in this industry. So, what does real signal actually look like? First of all, a portfolio of relevant projects is super important. Not just random tutorials that you followed, not to-do apps with blockchain slapped into it, actual projects that demonstrate you understand how protocols work. Second is demonstrating understanding of code bases, right? Can you read a protocol smart contract and explain what's going on? Can you identify patterns? Can you identify potential issues? And that leads into my third point, which is security awareness. This is a non-negotiable in crypto because if your code doesn't show that you think about how things can break, there's no chance that you're ready. Fourth is a public presence. You need a GitHub that's clean, maybe some technical writing, maybe some Twitter presence when you're engaging within the ecosystem. Something that shows that you're active in the space and not just applying from the outside. So let me tell you how crypto hiring actually works, because this is where most people get it wrong. A lot of roles in crypto are never publicly posted, especially at smaller teams and early stage projects. They hire through the network, through referrals, through people that they've seen doing good work publicly. So let's go back here and I'll show you guys, right? So this means that your cold application to a job board is competing against someone who's been building in public, engaging with the team's work, and oftentimes just getting referred by someone they trust. This is completely different to traditional tech, where you just simply apply for a majority of roles or just message someone on LinkedIn. So who do you think is actually going to get the interview? Of course, your reputation matters here way more than it does in traditional tech. Your Twitter, your GitHub, your writing, these are all things that can open more doors that your application never will. I've seen developers personally get hired because a founder saw their thread breaking down a protocol. I've seen people get opportunities because they contributed a thoughtful comment on someone's technical post. The game in crypto is different, and if you're playing it like it's Web 2, you're already behind. One more thing about how crypto teams evaluate candidates is that they move very fast, especially within small teams. When they find someone who has the real signal, they don't just wait. They don't run you through 6 rounds of interviews over endless months. They talk to you directly, they look at your work, and they make a decision quickly. This is good news if you're prepared and bad news if you're not. But if you get the call and your GitHub is empty or your portfolio is weak or you can't speak intelligently about the space, then you've lost that opportunity and it's never coming back. The developers who win in this market are the ones who are ready before the opportunity shows up. So if you want to break into crypto engineering, you need an anchor skill. This is something that makes you valuable across multiple types of projects, something that has real demand and that you can compound over time. For most people, this skill is smart contracts. And let me explain why. Smart contracts are the foundation of almost anything in crypto. DeFi protocols, NFTs, DAOs, prediction markets, cross-chain bridges, tokens, payment infrastructure, everything, it all runs on smart contracts. If you understand how to build and reason about smart contracts, you can work on almost anything in the space and you're not locked into just one niche. And trust me, the demand is real. There's a consistent shortage of developers who can write secure, production quality smart contract code. And the supply to this day has still never caught up. Every cycle, there's new projects being launched, new protocols being funded, and they all need engineers who can build the core infrastructure. This is why the barrier to entry matters, because smart contracts aren't easy. You can't just watch a few videos and then call yourself competent. The security requirements alone filter out most people, so you actually have to put in the work. But that's exactly why there's less competition at the top. Because if you do the work and you develop real depth, then you're in a smaller pool competing for a large number of opportunities. Now, let me be specific about what knowing smart contracts actually means, because there's a difference between saying that you know solidity and actually being hireable. So, level one is mastering your fundamentals. You need to understand the language, you need to write basic contracts, you know how storage works, how gas works, how transaction works. That's just the baseline. Level two is then pattern recognition. So now you've studied how real protocols are built, you recognize common patterns, you know about the token standards, access control, upgradability, fees, liquidity pools, for example. You can look at a protocol's code base and you can understand the architecture. Now, most people stop here because when you get to this point, you feel like you actually understand what's happening in smart contracts, right? But let me tell you right now, it goes so much deeper than this because level three, and this is one of the biggest differentiators, is the security mindset. Here's when you actually start thinking about how things break, right? You know common vulnerabilities, you know about reentrancy, integer overflow, access control, oracle manipulation, rounding issues. So now you've actually started to write your smart contract code defensively because you understand what is at stake. And once you've mastered this level, you now progress onto depth, right? Now you go deep on specific areas. Maybe it's DeFi mechanics, maybe it's cross-chain communication, maybe it's even security auditing. But now you have an expertise that goes beyond general competence. Most developers who say that they know smart contracts are somewhere between level one fundamentals and level two pattern recognition, right? Because they can write code, but they haven't really developed the security mindset. And because of that, they haven't really been able to go deep. The job market rewards people who are at level 3 and 4, right? With that security mindset combined with a deep expertise on top of your smart contract skills. This is going to give you the leverage that most developers just won't have. Now you can work on core engineering, you can do audits, you can consult, multiple pathways open up to you just from this foundation. And this is what I mean by leverage. One skill that's been developed deeply, creating options across the entire market. The question is whether you're willing to build that depth or whether you're going to stay at the surface level like everyone else. So now let's talk about why most developers get stuck, because the failure patterns are so predictable. And I've been doing this for so long, I've seen this over and over. Talented people who have good technical skills but just can't break through to the industry. And it's not because they're incapable, but it's because they keep making the same mistakes that everyone else makes. So here are the traps. So this is trap one, and this is the most basic of them all. It's the most common, right? Tutorial help. We all know what this is. You start learning, you find courses, you watch videos, you follow along tutorials, and you feel like you're making progress, but you never build anything real. Maybe you just completed a course, you got a certificate, and you add it to your LinkedIn. But then you start another course, and then months go by, maybe years, and then you just end up being consumed by hundreds of hours of content, but your GitHub is just trash, it's still empty. So here's the problem, right? When you watch someone build something, it's not the same as actually building it yourself. Completion does not equal competence, right? The developers who break through are the ones who can build things that can be reviewed, criticized, and improved. They put their work out there and they ship. If you've been learning for 6 months and you haven't shipped anything, you are in tutorial hell and you need to get out. So after you realize you stopped learning, then we get on to trap number two, which is just building the wrong things, guys. Like you escape tutorial hell, you start building, but what are you actually building, man? I see so many developers with portfolios full of generic, useless projects, to be honest, right? To-do apps, basic tokens, voting contracts, and just tutorial clones with just very minor changes that I've seen hundreds of times. None of this is showcasing any crypto specific knowledge. None of it is demonstrating that you understand how real protocols work. So when a hiring manager looks at your portfolio, they're just asking like, does this person even understand the space? You know, can they reason about the problems that we're actually trying to solve? Because a to-do app does not answer that question. A basic ERC20 token does not answer that question. What answers it is work that shows that you've been engaged with real protocol patterns, that you understand security awareness, something that looks like you've been part of a real team that actually builds something. At the end of the day, your portfolio is your proof of work. And if it's full of weak projects, then you're just sending an employer or a project the wrong signal. And that leads perfectly onto trap number three, which is just no proof of work, right? Some developers just skip the portfolio entirely. Like you just think that you can just make a CV like it's a traditional tech job, right? Just make a CV, talk about what you did in university and what your hobbies are, and just apply with that. And just talk about what you know, but you have no proof. In crypto, this does not work. I promise you. Nobody's gonna trust what you say. People trust what you can demonstrate. If your GitHub is empty or disorganized, and if you have no public presence, and if there's nothing to verify your claims, you are invisible in this industry. Proof of work is currency in this industry. And without it, you literally don't exist. Trap number four, breadth over depth, right? I mentioned this earlier, but it's important to repeat it, right? Some developers get into this habit, and I see this so commonly with the newer developers, right? You try to learn everything. You ask me about Solidity, Rust, Cairo, Move, what chain, Ethereum, Solana, Base, Binance, what niche should I do? DeFi, NFTs, gaming, infrastructure, like you're just all over the place. You end up just knowing little bits of pieces about random different things with no clue how to piece all together. And this is a trap because crypto teams don't hire generalists. And I think tech as a whole is moving in that direction where generalists are being phased out, at least in the early stages of your career, which was where most of you are, hence why you're watching this video. You need to be a specialist. You're going to get hired if you can go deep. People who have actually wrestled with hard problems in one specific area. If you're jumping between chains and languages every few weeks, you're not building any real depth. You're just collecting surface level knowledge and you're not doing anything near enough to get hired. So pick one lane, go deep, and then later down the line, you can expand once you're more established. Trap five is just coming into the industry with that Web2 mindset, applying like it's Web2. And I've talked about this in the industry section, right? But let's be a bit more direct. If your strategy is to apply to job postings and wait, I promise you're going to be waiting for a very long time. Cold applications might work sometimes, but they're the lowest probability path, especially if you don't have a strong signal. I might get away with it because I've got 3.5 years of experience with Chainlink, right? A top industry company that's well known, that's going to immediately stand out. But you who has no prior experience in the industry, you stand no chance. The developers who actually break in faster are the ones who build relationships. So that means engaging with teams and protocols that you want to work with publicly, who make themselves visible before they can even apply, right? Crypto is not about waiting for permission. It's about creating your own opportunity. So if you're just sitting at home sending applications into the void and wondering why nobody responds, this is probably why. Trap six is isolation, right? And this is what is going to kill more people than anything else. Trying to figure out everything on your own. You're not getting feedback on your code. No one's telling you when you're going in the wrong direction. You have no exposure to any real teams or how they even operate. And you have no community around you of people who are on the same path that can help you along the way. Learning in isolation is the worst way to do things. It's extremely slow because you're going to make mistakes that nobody's able to correct for you. You're going to build things and get no review on it. You're just going to develop a bunch of blind spots that you're not even aware of. So when you finally do apply for the roles, you realize you've been optimizing for the wrong things the whole time. The developers who break through the fastest are never doing it alone. They have peers, they have mentors, and they have strong feedback loops. Working in isolation feels safe and natural, especially as a techie and as a developer, but it's actually the most expensive mistake that you can make. So let's summarize the pattern here, because most developers who fail to break into crypto are not lazy, they're not incapable. You're just operating on bad information and you're just doing things that you think you should do, but nobody's actually corrected you on the right path. You've learned without building, you've built the wrong things, you haven't created a proof of work, you spread too thin, you just applied for random jobs and you just stayed on your own. And now you're stuck. So if any of that sounds familiar, the good news is that I'm about to break down a roadmap for you to make the path forward extremely clear, right? You just need to do something a little bit different. So let's get into the roadmap. So here is what actually works. And this is the exact part that and this is the so here is what actually works. And this is the exact path that I would follow if I was starting from scratch today. It's the same path I guide my students through. And it's what one of them has recently just gone through to get hired by Binance before he's even graduated. So I'm going to break it down into phases, and every single phase builds on from the last. Phase one is foundation. So from weeks 1 through week 4, your only goal here is to learn crypto app fundamentals. So that is JavaScript, that is Solidity, right? For most people, Solidity is the right language to learn because it has the broadest market within the crypto ecosystem. So don't just watch videos, you need to build as you learn. Every concept you learn, write code that directly uses it and applies it. Storage, mappings, functions, whatever it is, do not move on until you actually understand how it works. This stage is important and it is not a race. At this stage, speed does not matter, your understanding does. So start with simple contracts like a basic token, nothing fancy, but the goal is to get comfortable with the language and the patterns. By the end of week 4, you should be able to write basic contracts from scratch without looking things up constantly. That's the bar that you need to set. Now, phase 2 is pattern recognition, typically from weeks 5 through weeks 8. Here's where you actually start studying how real protocols are built. So go on GitHub and find protocols that you've heard of. I typically recommend protocols like Uniswap and Aave, right? Read their contracts. This might be hard at first and overwhelming because there's so much code and you won't really have an idea of what's happening, but that's completely fine. Just push through it, right? Fork the repo, deploy it locally, and change small things and see what breaks. This is how you're going to develop intuition. Here, you're going to start recognizing common patterns, like how does a protocol handle access control, or how do they manage upgrades, or how do they structure their fees, or how do they handle user deposits. All these small little things are going to build up a mental library about how things are done at a production level at the top. And this is what's going to separate someone who can write code from someone who can architect systems. By the end of weeks 8, you should be able to look at a protocol's code base and explain it at a high level, what it does and how it is structured. Phase 3 is all about developing that security mindset, right? This is where most developers never get to, and it's exactly why you should. Start learning where smart contracts break. So study past exploits. There's databases of hacks and vulnerabilities that you can look through. Read the postmortems and try and reproduce them. Understand what went wrong and why. Learn the common vulnerability patterns like reentrancy, integer issues, access control, whatever it is, right? Understand how each one works and how to prevent it. Then you can start thinking adversarially about how your own code functions, right? Every function you write, ask yourself, how could this be exploited? What assumptions am I making? What happens if someone calls this an unexpected order? This mindset is the key differentiator because when you write code that actually shows security awareness, it signals to employers that you understand what's at stake. At the end of this section, you should be able to look at a contract and at least identify a few potential issues. You don't need to be an expert auditor, but you just need to demonstrate that you can think about security. The next stage is all about your portfolio projects, right? Now it's time for you to build the work that's going to get you hired. You need 2 or 3 projects that are going to demonstrate real depth, not tutorials, not clones, but original, meaningful work with real improvements. Each of these projects should show protocol level thinking, clean, readable, and maintainable code, security awareness, and clear documentation. Take it one step further and even write about what you built, right? Explain your decisions. Why did you structure your code in this way? What trade-offs did you consider? What areas of improvements are there? You need to make your GitHub clean and navigable. Someone should be able to land on your profile, find your projects, and understand what you've done in just a few minutes. And this is your proof of work. It's going to do the heavy lifting when you start reaching out for opportunities. And if you want an example of what a standout portfolio looks like, click the link in the description, which is going to take you to join my community where we share all of these resources for every single one of you. The next phase is all about visibility. And this is something that you are going to do in parallel to everything else, right? Because this is where you're going to document and share everything that you're learning, everything that you're building on Twitter, on GitHub, maybe even Substack articles, right? If you like writing, you can do that on Substack. You don't need to be a content creator and you don't need to post every day, but you need to start building up your presence so that when someone Googles your name, something should come up. When a hiring manager checks your Twitter or checks your LinkedIn, they should see that you're engaged in the ecosystem. Engage with protocols and teams that you want to work with. Reply to their posts, share thoughtful takes on their work. Just make yourself visible to people who might hire you. Opportunities find people who are visible. If you're invisible, then you're relying entirely on cold applications, and that's just a disadvantage that you don't need. The next phase is about positioning, right? Because when your portfolio is ready, now you just need to position yourself and prepare yourself to get hired. So you need the understanding about how crypto interviews work. They're usually more technical and more practical than Web2 interviews, right? So be ready to talk about your projects in detail, be able to explain every line within your code and discuss your decisions. Practice explaining concepts simply. If you can't explain what you built to someone who's not technical, then you don't understand it well enough. And you need to know what you're targeting, right? Do you want a full-time role? Are you trying to get clients? Each different path requires different positioning. So you need to apply it with context. Don't just send a resume, reference their work, show that you've done some research, demonstrate that you understand what they're building and why you're the perfect fit. And during this stage, you need to keep building, even while you're applying. Because when someone looks at your GitHub and they can see that you're constantly pushing commits and you're shipping every week, that's just more signal in your favor. And all of this put together is going to get you hired. Now, let's go back to the story that I told you earlier, right? About one of my students in my community that landed a role at Binance. He followed this exact path and it didn't take him years. It took him 2 months. He didn't have any special access. He didn't have a fancy degree. He was still in university, but he followed the roadmap that I gave him. He was systematic. He built the right things, built up a security awareness, and created a standout portfolio that showcased real signal. When he got his first crypto interview, he was ready. He could talk through his projects, he could reason about the protocols, and he showed depth. In his first ever interview, he got the role. That is not luck, that's preparation, meeting, opportunity. Now, I want to show you this is not theory, right? Because I'm not talking about what might work. I'm talking about what has worked for real people, especially very recently. Whether it's people landing in Binance as of recently, whether it's people getting security roles, whether it's people working for Ethereum, right? All these stories happened and they're not the only ones. I've had students transition from Web2 into crypto, experienced developers who felt stuck in traditional tech, who looked at crypto, saw an opportunity, and didn't know how to break in. They all followed this exact same path. They rebuilt their portfolios of crypto native works, they developed that security mindset, and they made themselves visible. Within months, they're landing protocol level work, not entry level work, but real roles with high responsibility. I've had people who went from I don't know where to start to getting paid for their first crypto project in under 6 months. Not because they were special, but because they followed a path that works. And in my own agency, I see this from the hiring side, right? We evaluate developers and we're looking for exactly what I've described: signal, depth, security, and proof of work. The developers who show up with that get the opportunities, and the ones who don't. Simple as that. It's not complicated, it's not easy, but the path is clear, the execution is hard, and this is why most people don't execute. If you want me to be completely honest with you, everything I just told you is free. The information is all out there. You could have figured this out by yourself. So why is it that most people still fail? This is something that I call the execution gap. It's the difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it, right? Because these are two different problems. Most developers who are stuck don't have a knowledge problem, they have an execution problem. They know they should build projects, but they don't finish them. They know they should learn about security, but they skip it because it's hard or they think it's hard. They know they should be visible, yet they never post anything. They know they should get feedback, but they stay isolated because it's more comfortable. And months and months and months go by, years go by, and they're still in the same place. This is where most people stall. And it's not because the path is unclear, but it's because walking it alone is hard. You've got nobody to review your work. Nobody's telling you when you're building the wrong thing. Nobody's holding you accountable, and no one's showing you what good work actually looks like. So you're just guessing, and guessing is slow and expensive. This is why I built Decentral Hub, because Decentral Hub is not a course. It's a crypto career accelerator for aspiring crypto engineers. We give you structured paths so you're not just guessing what to learn next. You get projects with you so you get real feedback on your work, career guidance so you're positioning yourself correctly in an industry, and a community of people who are on the same path of you instead of doing this alone. The students who get results are the ones who execute, and this structure is what helps them execute faster. But I want to be clear about something. This is not for everyone. If you can execute alone, then do it. Take everything I've said in this video and go and start building because you don't need anyone's help. But if you've been stuck and if you've been learning for months or years on end and you still haven't broken through, and if you know what you should be doing, but you're not doing it, then you probably don't have a knowledge problem, you have an execution problem. And that's harder to solve alone. Decentral Hub exists for people who want help executing. And there's a link below if that's for you. But either way, this roadmap that I've just broken down for you works. This pathway is real and people are walking on it right now and getting results. The question is whether you will. Right, let's summarize the path that's going to get you to your desired outcome. First, understand how crypto teams actually hire. It's nothing like Web2. Your credentials don't mean shit. Your signal matters more, right? So companies need to trust you to deliver. Step two is anchor on smart contracts and crypto app development as your core skill. It's the foundation for almost everything in crypto. And here, depth creates more leverage across the entire market. Step three, avoid the traps that I listed for you earlier. Step four, follow this roadmap. Watch this video over and over again until every step is drilled into your head. Step five, create your proof of work, 2 or 3 projects that showcase real work and real depth. Step six, execute. Not someday in the future, but right now. Stack days and start building your momentum. Make this your identity, not just a phase. The market in crypto is not hard, but it's just misunderstood. There are so many developers breaking in right now and getting hired and building their careers in crypto. And they're not smarter than you, but they understand the game and they're playing it correctly. And now every single one of you understands it too. So the question is what you're going to do next. I want every single one of you to go build something and I'll see you in the next video.